Yo, guys, sometimes when we as I've just had like actually part two of that video, and literally I been talking and I didn't know that actually I didn't see that I didn't connect the speaker, so man, we do part two, right? Part two, we just get into the story like straight, right? So like I grew up, right? I grew up in the village, right? I grew up in the village. I've got four siblings, right? Four siblings. Um, Grew up in a village where my siblings, they were going to school in towns, right? I was the only one left in the village amongst my siblings, right? And and for me it was okay, right? It was okay being there with my grandmother, my cousins were happy, we just grew up happy child. Like I was a very, very happy child, very energetic, very dancing all over, you know um even tomorrow when you see me dancing on streets, you must just know it's always been there. It's always been there from primary school, man. Before even primary school, I was always that child, man, that happy child, right? Grew up with my grandmother and my siblings. They were going to school in town, right? I don't know town. I've never been to town. Until it's sometimes when we talk about God's story. I looking back in my life, I've always known that I was different, right? I've always been know I was different. From just being that kid that I come from a where there's no education, where literally there's no education. And I for some reason I was when other kids the kids would drop out of school from young age, like very, very young age, primary school, middle school. I was that kid that took books seriously, even though I didn't go to school. I wanted to go varsity, but I couldn't afford, paying varsity, but I still wanna go back to school, man. But going back to the story, right? I grew up there, man, with my siblings. I will see my mom maybe once or twice a year, right? Um, and I never knew that I didn't have a father, right? I never knew, right? I happy child, right? Happy child. But I've always knew that I was different, right? I was having conversation with myself from young age. Now looking back, honestly, I always had a conversation with myself that I don't belong there. I don't belong here. I always look at people, man. Look at the village. Look at homes that we grew up in, and I always knew that I don't belong here, right? From young age, from primary school, right? I remember used to say to myself that maybe my mom, right? My mom was working in a hotel somewhere. Then my parents, my mom and dad, maybe they were coming from overseas, or somewhere, and they came and that hotel, and they were having a fight or argument about me, whatever, or about amongst themselves, and they left me with my mom, right? And they left. That's how my mom raised me, right? And I literally have always had that conversation with that believed that actually I've always asked my mom. I even asked have a conversation with my mom, even my sister. I was like, "Am I adopted?" I remember having conversation with my sister like, "Am I adopted? There's something wrong, man. There's just something that doesn't add up, right? I don't belong, right?" Um, I said to my sister, right, that no, man. I remember even my sister. There's my mom's cousin, right? Um, her child. It's a girl, right? And my sister said like either one as adopted. That's what I was telling my sister. One, either I'm adopted. Two, or I have a twin, and probably my mom gave away the twin, right? That's the conversation I was having with my sister. Literally, I remember my sister said to me, "There's my mom's cousin's child, right? she looks like me. She said like, she looks like you. Probably, maybe that's the twin. Maybe she gave the child to her cousin, right? And also I have conversation with my mom. Literally, I have that conversation with my mom. It's like, I'm adopted. You know, what's going on? There's something that you're not telling me, right? Sharp. Um, and I've had that conversation over and over. My mom did not just never tell me the truth, right? But before we get to that part, right? And I left village, right? I left village to high school. Now that's what time when I was joining my siblings, right, with my mom. First time I see town, I was going to high school. Literally, all I know is just the bushes. You know what I'm saying? Um, First time I see town was when I went to for high school, right? Rustenburg. Shout out to Rustenburg. Um, and then that was the time. That's the time when I joined my mom and my siblings and my stepfather, right? And that was the first time, that happy child, that dancing kid who's always being all over. It's gone, right? I was A student, right? I was A student. Now my marks kind of like drops now, and I was moving from, I remember first year of high school, first term until second term, I was just there, right? Until third term, after second term, my marks just start dropping, right? Just dropping from 80, 90 to 60, right? To then now 40, 80, and I'm like, me? But and this was the first time where I was exposed to witchcraft, right? That has to make. That was the first time I was exposed to witchcraft. Not that witchcraft was not happening in my village, but because I was with my grandmother and I knew that my grandmother was prayer warrior, I've always probably protected. This is the first time that now there's no love, there's no singing. I grew up in a village where with my grandmother, where around 6, in the afternoon or at night, my grandmother will call all of us together and just to pray and sing and right. Um, this high school now, um, I don't realize there's something wrong about my life, right? This is the first time where I'm in an environment where there's no love, right? And I'm trying to pinpoint this. I realize there's something wrong about me, something about my life, but I cannot pinpoint what was it, right? Um, until after matric, and this is something that I also say God works in a mysterious way. That God have always protected me from the truth from young age. You know, as much as I say I have always had and now, if I looked in my life in a victim, I I'll say that I've been through the most, right? I've had difficult life, right? But if I look at my life from God's eye, I'm saying like, I know God have always paved a way for me, man, from a young age. And like I said, for me telling this story, this is me saying to God that I surrender. This is my prayer to God. Sharing the story, this is my prayer to God. Say like, you know what I'm saying? Until matric, after matric year, right? This is after matric, first day of school. Our kids are going to school. I've passed matric, right? So in the place where we're staying, there was like a yard where people coming from Northern Cape to the northwest to Rustenburg for mines, right? So in the yard that we were rented, there were other families, right, that renting rooms, right? And the first day, kids go to school. So when the kids go to school, school is just at opposite street, right? And then um, I could see kids going to school, right? Now it's in the morning. This man came from the one of the who rented the place, right? The room, right? He comes ask me like, "Are you not going to school?" I was like, "No, I'm done with school. I passed my trick." And he said, "Did you pass?" I was like, "Yeah." This guy was so happy. The guy was so happy. He came to me and hugged me, literally grabbed me and he hugged me. He was so happy. And he gave me 20 rand and say like he said, go and buy a cold drink, right? And after he left, I froze. For the first time, I froze. That was the first time I realized actually I didn't have a father. And I was like, I don't have a father. Actually, I don't have a father, right? And I went to the toilet and I cried from 30 minutes to 40 minutes, just crying, and that was the first time I started having conversation with my mom, right? Mom, who is my father, right? And my mom, the conversation will always end in a fight, right? My mom will always fight, right? And I will see the pain in her eyes. I will see the pain in her body. I will see the pain in her voice, right? And I'll stop, right? I'll stop the conversation, right? And then I stop the conversation. Then later, I revisit the conversation again. The pain, right? There's a pain. Literally, I can see the pain in her body. Every time I talk about the conversation, she's shaking. Her body just, even the voice, you hear the pain, right? I stop, right? Yes, again, pass by. I go, now I'm adult, right? I now wanted to, remember I was in Joburg at that time, trying to get into within the entertainment industry, trying to, you know, chasing my passion, right? And now this became a problem now. Now that's the reason why, the first time I experienced some mental, depression, um, now because of this thing is just in the back of my mind. No matter how much I try to ignore it, no matter how much I try to, then I started again coming back home, have a conversation with my mom. Like, let's just revisit the conversation again. My mom just, the pain is there, right? And I was like, man, there's something wrong here, right? I'll stop again. Yes, pass by again. Talk to my mom about the conversation. Still, the pain is there, right? Um, until my mom started realizing that actually that my life is in danger, right? I will have, um, almost hit by a car, right? Guys, I'll talk about the stories there, how many times I could have died, right? I'll share the story how I got this guy here. This time I almost hit by a car, and I'll tell the story how I almost hit by a car. Literally, I look back, man, I was like, God loved me, man. And then I until that time when literally my life was in danger now, right? Um, that was the only time my mom could see like, okay, cool. Now we have to do this, right? Eventually, my mom took me to my father, right? Took me to my father, right? Family. That's where I got, rejected from that family. I um, but I never got to know my father, right? Because my mom only took me from as a matric. My mom only took me there, agreed to take me there in 2019, right? And when I got there, already he passed, and in his tombstone, right? The only thing I know about my father is literally just tombstone, right? Um, in the tombstone, he passed away in 2016, 2015, right? And those like years passed before that I always said to my mom, let's go, right? But my mom didn't want to, right? Um, and then I got to that family, and I saw the tombstone of the father, and then but then eventually I got rejected from that family, right? They told me to never come back there ever again, you know. And for me it was just like, it was not a hateful thing, I was had, that I've been fighting with my mom for so long, only to get rejection from this family that I've been fighting with my mom with. My mom kept on telling me like, do not go there, do not go there, right? Um, and then I left that family, right? That was the only time when now I was going through spiritual awakening, and that's when I started going knowing who I am, right? Um, my power that I possess, the power that I possess, my spiritual gift. That's the only time then I got to know actually. Now having conversation with God, now you know, God revealed truth about who I am, right? Okay, my mom took me there, and then but something told me that there's something that your mama doesn't tell you. Let your mom tell you the truth of who you are, right? Still having conversation with my mom, I was like, there's something that will not tell me. What is it? The one now I was thinking to myself like maybe I'm very very adopted, right? Or two, I have a twin that my mom gave away, right? Um Still my mom doesn't want to talk. It's like you always told me that you wanted your father. I took you there. What more you want from me, right? The pain is there, right? I will leave the conversation. Something tells me like let your mom tell you the truth of who you are, right? I'm talking to my mom. There's something that will not tell me. What is it? Tell me, right? My mom doesn't want to say, right? You know how God works, man. And I don't have the scripture with me, right? And I forgot the scripture, but I know what it says, right? 3 days before my mom told me the truth, right? For the first time, I read the Bible, right? I never read the Bible. I grew up as much as I grew up in a church. I loving church, but I never really read the Bible of as a kid. As a kid, Bible is boring. Let's just be honest, guys. Bible is boring as a kid, right? And there are adult people who never read the Bible, right? As an adult, I've never really read the Bible, right? For the first time, somebody said, read the Bible, right? I opened the Bible randomly, and I just opened the Bible and just pointed, a scripture, and I read the scripture for the first time reading a Bible. And the scripture, I forgot, man. I would probably write the scripture, you know, in the title, right? I will just read the scripture there, right? And the scripture said, I read, right, in the book of right? And it said, Setswana in literally telling my story of who I am, how I was conceived and my life, how it's always been, right? Literally, right? The scripture, I forgot the scripture, man. I know it, I forgot, Yes, I was not prepared to talk about it anyway, but I'll talk about the scripture in other time. But the scripture literally said, go bone o le mo mading a gago, right? O kgamatetse madi, go sena kutlwelo botlhoko, go sena leitlho le le go thusang, right? Ke a go tsaya, ke a go apesa ka kobo yaka. Okay, and it says, go bone ke feta o kgamatetse madi mo mading a gago, o le ko nageng, ya go tsaya, go sena kutlwelo botlhoko, go sena leitlho le le go utlwelang botlhoko. Ke a go tsaya, ke a go phuta, ke a go apesa ka kobo yaka, ke a go raya ke re phela, right? Ke a re phela, right? Ke a boa ke a boeletse ka re phela, right? Basically what it says like I saw, okay, I can't translate that in English. I'll just do the right another video just talking about that scripture because for me that scripture spoke life to me, how I was conceived, literally how my life has always been, right? From being rejected, from being rejected, growing up without love, without, but God has always been there for me, right? And 3 days, literally 3 days after first time I reading Bible, 3 days I asked my mom, like, Mom, there's something that you tell me. What is it? For the first time, my mom told me the truth. Right? She just busted say, I almost said the name because of she said the name of the father, right? But she just said that literally the name, right, raped me, right? Um, she said, "Kasetswana, can't I'll make other video Kasetswana," right? She said, "Banbani raped me," right? And then she said that he so the story, bit of a story, right? So my mom was working in this family. This is a rich family, very, very well off family until now, you know, very well off family. My mom was working there as a domestic worker, right? Um, and one day, this, I don't know, I don't want to sound disrespectful, but this cheese boy just felt the need that he can just take, you know, he can just, he's entitled, you know. This is somebody who they grew up without, have not worked a day in their lives, you know, and he had a knife on her throat, right? And he said to her that if you dare scream or tell this story, I'm gonna kill you, right? A knife, a knife on my mom's throat. The day I was conceived, the knife was on my mom's throat, right? And fear, you know, and you know, my mom asking herself what she did wrong, you know, right? That's something that my mom tells me, right? And and the first thing that my mom told me, I was like, I knew it, right? I knew it. I remember I love writing, right? I love writing, right? I have lots of books that I wrote. That's why I say, like, one day I want to write a book, man. I want to write a book, right? There was one book, you know, I left it in the village, right? There was one book that I wrote that I was born of rape, you know, and those I wrote that thing without knowing that I wrote with the intention, right? Um, but I wrote that back in 2016, somewhere there. And I wrote that without even actually realizing actually I wrote that, right? Only now when I went through that book, I saw that I wrote that thing there, but I was not aware, right? And the moment my mom told me, I was like, I knew it. I was not shocked, right? And I, you know, and one thing about my mom, right? My mom, she was very close with my grandmother, right? Very, very like best friends, right? And until this day, the day my mom told me, my mom was, I was the first person she told. Literally, my mom have never told anybody the truth about what happened. You know how I was conceived, right? So even my grandmother passed away without knowing who my father was. You know, we've never spoken about it. You know, and um, you know, you know, guys, I'm getting a bit of emotional. Let me just do probably the part three, man. Let me just do the part three because of that's part three. It's when I literally just get into, you know, let's just do the part three. You know, I'm not okay.